Once the war begins, and Lincoln never sees this as a war between two independent countries. Lincoln always referred to the southern states as states in rebellion. But once the war begins, we can see advantages for both sides. We can talk about the Union, or actually we should just call it the United States, and we can see their advantages. They had more of the industrial capacity. The South had never industrialized, the North did. More miles of railroad track going back to those internal improvements of the antebellum period. They had more of a white population and more immigrants that could serve in the military. The North actually had a navy and the South did not. So the North has a lot of industrial advantages. The South had several advantages of their own, though. The biggest advantage that the South had was what they called king cotton. Their cotton production was so important to their livelihood and their survival that it earned this name king. They were relying on the trading relationship with Great Britain to provide them materials that they couldn't produce for themselves. Eventually, they were hoping for an alliance, which never came. But Britain would supply them with manufactured goods that they couldn't produce for themselves, and they were hoping that Britain would give them ships. The biggest advantage outside of King Cotton that the South had was military leadership and geography. When Lincoln called for volunteers after Fort Sumter, many of the nation's top officers, military officers, left their positions and went to the South. Most famously, Robert E. Lee left from Virginia. Now, this is not to say that the officers had to leave. Several Virginia officers stayed with the Union. They also had the advantage of geography. They just had to fight a defensive war, and hopefully the North would eventually get tired and leave. We call this a war of attrition. So military leadership, geography, and King Cotton are the Southern advantages.